Walk through life as if you are the master of your craft. Not because you've proven it to the crowd, but because the moment you shrink your posture, you betray your own potential. The absolute truth the masses avoid is brutally simple. You are entirely equal to anyone, not lacking in intellect, inherent worth, or the raw capacity to construct an extraordinary life. Yet somewhere, the noise of comparison, external critique, and past failures conditioned your mind. To exist below your true capacity, you learned to hesitate before stepping forward. You started weighing your worth on the scales of critics blind to your path. Each time you accepted that lesser version, you abandoned the self you are capable of building. Today, you and I end this pattern. Confidence isn't some divine gift granted to a lucky few. It is a daily, disciplined choice. Your deliberate posture dictates how reality responds to you. The identity you operate from dictates the reality you forge. Mental strength is never found by sheer accident. You construct it with total intention, choice by choice, routine by routine. Day by single day, the masses sit around waiting for courage like lottery tickets. They assume one morning they will magically wake up confident, suddenly disciplined, ready to command their fate. But resilience doesn't arrive as a miracle. It is an internal citadel, engineered stone by stone. The philosopher you become tomorrow is forged by your actions right now, not by passive daydreams. You cannot walk as a master while harboring the thoughts of a victim. If your self-image remains chained to past defeats, old shame, outside judgments, or limits you absorbed way back, progress will always feel like dragging chains. Your psyche will violently pull you back toward a comfortable, but ultimately pathetic, state of existence. True philosophical growth never starts with external metrics. It starts within. Results don't shape identity. Identity drives outcomes. A grounded self commands powerful actions. Those actions forge reality. A fragile ego crumbles at the slightest friction. With an ironclad identity, adversity becomes fuel. The very first arena to rebuild this foundation is dawn. Morning is the ultimate proving ground. Before society starts taxing your focus, before duty and chaos invade, you possess a brief, sacred window of utter clarity. Your practice in these quiet moments dictates every single choice that follows. Stoic minds never negotiate with dawn. We claim it. We guard it fiercely. We use it to establish sovereignty over our own thoughts. Grab that phone upon waking, and you surrender your mind's kingdom to the algorithm before putting on armor. Start the day with deliberate practice, however small, and your awareness shifts into an active state. 60 minutes, minus digital static, lets your rational mind anchor. One focused task that generates friction, like studying a heavy text. Journaling your intent, or physically training, proves to your biology that you dictate reality instead of reacting to it. Dawn becomes a ritual of self-mastery. The internal dialogue you permit actively steers your psychological state. Let fear, pausing, and harsh critique run wild, and that poison becomes the exact script your habits follow. Anchor your intellect with conscious declarations, and you sever the old behavioral chains trying to break you. Direct commands, I arrive, I execute, I govern my path, are not cheap affirmations. They are cognitive overrides. They remind the ego who rules. With rigorous practice, these truths rebuild your self-perception, and perception entirely dictates your execution. Yet, mere routine falls short. Forging absolute resilience demands shredding the internal narrative you've accepted for years. The majority loop a quiet mental script that keeps them paralyzed, whispering that they lack discipline, lack natural gifts, lack boldness, or simply aren't ready yet. Each repetition of this fiction hardens the very constraints trapping you today. To cultivate power, you must cross-examine these thoughts, not swallow them. When the brain signals defeat, stop. Demand proof. When memory flashes old failures, counterattack with your current objective. When it whispers you are unprepared, remember this Stoic truth. Readiness is forged in the fire of action, never waiting. This isn't toxic positivity, it is raw mental discipline. The conscious practice of aiming your intellect rather than being its hostage. Personal standards are the bedrock of this shift. They dictate exactly what you tolerate and what you ruthlessly reject. They govern your internal dialogue, where you spend your focus, and how you forge your physical vessel. Let's be clear. If your standards hit the floor, your entire life will sink right down with them. Demand high virtue from yourself, and your daily choices will elevate to meet it. A truly cultivated character refuses to shrink for weak habits. Instead, it demands actions that actively forge the rational, disciplined future you are trying to build. You and I must understand something crucial. True strength is not mere intensity. Any amateur can feel motivated for a few days. Anyone pushes forward when passions run hot. But genuine philosophical strength lies in steady consistency, the rare ability to uphold your principles long after the initial excitement fades away. It is the silent, stoic discipline of simply doing the work on days when progress feels agonizingly slow and invisible. This practice rarely looks dramatic in the present, but day by day, it constructs a foundation of character that simply cannot be shaken. Actions rooted in your core philosophy easily outlast fleeting emotions. Passions naturally change from day to day. Motivation rises and falls, but a reasoned identity stands firm. Start asking yourself a different question each morning and watch your daily behavior shift entirely. Stop asking what you feel like doing. Ask instead what action aligns with the disciplined person you are striving to become. This single mental pivot strips away temporary emotional urges and anchors you firmly in long-term character. Forging a resilient self also demands absolutely brutal honesty. You must clearly examine where you lack discipline, where you manufacture excuses, and where mere comfort has conquered your personal growth. This ruthless self-examination is not designed to create shame. It is designed to awaken your reason. Awareness enables course correction. That correction builds internal trust, and self-trust serves as the bedrock of enduring inner strength. The exact second you decide to command your mind rather than blindly following its impulses, your reality shifts. First, your thoughts align, then your physical posture straightens, and finally, your choices elevate. Eventually, society cannot help but notice the newfound weight in how you speak, step, and stand. This strength turns visible simply because it was forged internally first. You're not just collecting useful routines. You are constructing an entirely new philosophy, a resilient character robust enough to shoulder the exact future you intend to manifest. The formidable character cannot take root inside a chaotic mind. Each morning, your intellect awakens with the raw potential to reason clearly, generate deep insights, and advance purposefully toward a life of meaning. Yet, most modern individuals immediately plunge their consciousness into absolute mental chaos. Mindless scrolling, toxic comparisons, judgments from total strangers, and massive data feeds completely irrelevant to their actual future. Before the sun has fully risen, their internal resolve is already fractured. Understand this. Ambient noise does not merely distract you. It actively reshapes you. It drags your attention far away from the only rational voice that matters, your own. You and I often hear people blame a lack of discipline or clarity, but the fundamental philosophical problem is simply that their minds are brutally overcrowded. When your consciousness is swamped by hundreds of competing voices, discerning your own moral compass becomes utterly impossible. Your focus shatters, your vital energy scatters to the wind, and your core identity steadily decays. A profound life cannot be built if your brain is forever reacting to every passing stimulus. Pure attention is the most sacred currency you will ever possess. Where you direct your attention, your thoughts expand. And where those thoughts expand, your true character forms. Naturally, your future follows that exact character. Therefore, every single input you permit past your mental gates either fortifies the philosopher you are becoming or actively destroys it. Shallow inputs slowly erode your inner confidence. Noble inputs reinforce deep focus and belief. Guarding your mind is never optional. It is absolute survival in a modern society that ruthlessly preys on your attention. The fundamental first step to reclaiming your sovereignty is mastering the art of intentional silence. Human reason was never built to digest thousands of trivial data points before breakfast. When flooded with cheap stimulation, your mind completely loses its capacity for profound thought. It defaults to mere reaction. That is why periods of pure, uninterrupted focus remain so incredibly transformative. A strict 90-minute focus block can fundamentally rewire your mental operations. For that duration, silence every digital alert. Eradicate every single distraction. Then, aim your undivided attention squarely at a pursuit of real substance. Within that sacred space, you cease reacting and finally start creating. This total silence is what reconnects you with your own unclouded reason. As the external chatter dies, your intellect naturally reorders itself. Complex ideas crystallize. Hard decisions become remarkably clear. True self-assurance returns because you finally stop measuring your journey against the polished lives of others. Instead, you lock your gaze strictly on your own philosophical path. Pure clarity blossoms in tranquil environments. Absolute confusion breeds in chaos. Another Stoic discipline is heavily curating exactly whose voice enters your headspace. The unthinking masses simply let random data flood their brains unchecked. But you and I must treat our focus like a fortress. Imagine drafting a mental whitelist and a strict blacklist. Your whitelist holds the voices that forge your character, the wise mentors you study, the profound philosophical concepts that force you to evolve. It holds the insights that stretch your intellect. These sources nourish your virtues and remind you of your chosen path. The blacklist, however, traps everything that fractures your precious focus. Vain content that sparks envy, cynical voices that complain, petty debates that bleed your energy, and platforms built solely to scatter your mind. Today, you and I must ruthlessly filter what enters our minds to shape who we become. Your attention stops acting like an open door for just anyone. It becomes a guarded fortress. But as practitioners, we know a far more dangerous noise exists, one worse than the chaos of the outside world. It is the chatter inside your own head. Even with screens off and the room completely still, your brain will replay old doubts and heavy negative beliefs. The thoughts whispering that you are unready, incapable, or simply not enough. Those inner voices usually stem from past failures, harsh critics, or old moments of weakness. Left untrained, they echo endlessly until they dictate your actions. True mental discipline means commanding your own mind with firm leadership rather than surrendering to fear. When doubt creeps in, refuse to let it rule your thoughts. Observe the thought clearly, Then replace it with deliberate logic. Remember that your mind is your sovereign territory. You choose what takes root. Over time, practicing this mental discipline builds inner strength and crushes useless negative self-talk. Solitude is a crucial tool in this daily practice. Most dread being alone because silence exposes the truths they avoid. But solitude is not painful isolation. It is an absolute advantage. It is where core ideas harden, sharp clarity returns, and true identity is forged. Sitting with yourself, completely free of cheap distractions, reminds you of your true purpose. As mental static fades, a profound shift happens. The external world loses its grip on your emotions. Outside criticism stops stinging. Comparing yourself to others becomes entirely pointless. Worthless opinions stop driving your choices. You stop reacting blindly and start responding with intention. Instead of soaking up junk, you pick what earns your focus. Let us ask ourselves a question most people fear. What useless voices have we let live in our heads? What cheap media are we consuming that destroys our daily focus? Which daily distractions have we accepted that quietly drain our potential? We do not ask these things to feel guilty. They serve to wake us up to the sheer power of focus. Recognizing that your attention forges your identity and identity dictates your future changes the entire game. Guarding your mind becomes your main duty, not an afterthought. Pure silence becomes a weapon rather than an awkward pause. Your focus turns into an overwhelming advantage against a distracted world. The disciplined Stoic never fears external chaos, having mastered how to fiercely protect the mental forge where true character is built. Having faith in your own future before anyone else does is the absolute most defining trait a practitioner can build. You will face brutal moments when nobody sees your vision. No one grasps the hard path you are walking. 0 people will stand up and clap for the grinding effort you put in. During those lonely stretches, the average person starts second-guessing themselves. They mistake a lack of applause as proof they took the wrong road. But reality dictates that every great endeavor starts in total isolation. Long before society believes in you, you must trust yourself. True self-reliance is never a fleeting mood that only shows up during good times. It is an iron discipline practiced daily. Fools misunderstand real confidence because they wrongly assume it only arrives after winning. They think that conquering a massive goal will magically grant them self-worth. The philosophical truth runs the other way. Conviction comes first. Action follows conviction. Victory naturally grows from relentless, repeated action. Needing outside validation before you trust yourself is like demanding the autumn harvest before ever planting seeds. We have all felt the sting of being underestimated, grinding away while the crowd ignored our sweat. We pitch concepts that get brushed aside. We march forward while the masses openly question our basic competence. Those harsh moments can easily make you feel invisible. You start questioning if your daily grind matters or if your goals are a joke. But public praise was never the actual metric of your value. Your worth hinges entirely on raw commitment, stoic resilience, and working in the dark. The most reliable method to fortify self-belief is by stacking hard evidence. True confidence blooms when your brain learns to trust your behavior. Every single morning brings a chance to gather tiny scraps of proof that you are advancing. Knocking out one hard task, facing a tough conversation head-on, or taking a single step proves you are an individual who executes. Those minor wins might feel trivial today, but they compound inside your psyche. Eventually, your logical mind recognizes the new pattern. You are no longer someone who just preaches about growth. You actually execute. Another Stoic tactic to cement that belief is remembering why your mission matters. Weak individuals chase empty goals without ever identifying their core philosophy. When genuine hardship hits, they quit because the real motive driving their sweat was entirely hollow. You and I must define exactly why we fight. Not to impress the crowd, not for petty competition, but to honor the absolute best version of ourselves. For you and I, the motive might be freedom, growth, or forging the absolute strongest version of yourself. Once that purpose sharpens, doubt loses its grip. Mental rehearsal locks that belief into place. Take time every single day to picture the person you are building. This is not daydreaming. Treat it strictly as rehearsal. See your exact posture, hear your tone, and watch how you meet resistance with total, unbroken calm. Focus on the iron discipline you hold, the hurdles you crush, and the solid character you forge daily. The mind obeys repetition. Picture that future self constantly, and your brain starts treating that identity as a hard, physical truth. Yet the heaviest resistance you face always comes from your own inner voice. The brain loves to loop familiar scripts, especially those tied directly to old defeats. When the mind mutters you are unprepared or bound to fail, strike back on purpose. Never let a weak thought pass without a fight. Overwrite it with a command matching your new standard. When doubt screams impossible, remember that every great victory started out feeling entirely foreign. When the voice claims you lack readiness, remember that true preparation only comes by doing. Some days, your conviction will crack. Forward momentum looks painfully slow. The winds stay entirely hidden. You and I both know walking away feels tempting then. But this exact point of friction is where your philosophy matters most. The toughest minds refuse to wait for absolute guarantees before they take a single step. They step directly into the unknown. Their faith is not a loud performance. It is quiet, brutal, and relentlessly persistent. The crowd almost never cheers for an early concept. Most demand hard proof before they hand over any applause. That is just how human nature operates. But rely on outside validation, and your momentum will snap at the first headwind. Real power generates internally. It gets forged strictly through your dedication to the exact character you are building. Each dawn, you act in sync with that vision. Your internal foundation hardens a fraction more. Soon enough, the whole structure shifts. The bare repetitions fuse into rock-solid habits. Those routines build your identity. Then, that new self triggers visible outcomes. Right on cue, the crowd suddenly shows up acting amazed and supportive. But by then, their clapping means nothing to your path. You have already handed yourself the only proof that matters. The single greatest defender of your destiny must always be yourself. Rise each morning and accept full duty over your life's blueprint. The second doubt creeps in, crush it with immediate action. When the grind feels endlessly slow, recall that conviction demands endurance. Tomorrow is owned by those who trust the walk completely. The exact second you fully back your own power, you start building a reality the rest of them called insane. The mere way you step into a space transmits a heavy signal before your mouth even opens. The masses totally miss how deeply their physical aura dictates every single external interaction. They drift into rooms unsure, shoulders slumped, tone weak, their whole vibe silently begging the world for permission just to breathe. Offer yourself up exactly like that, and reality will gladly bounce that pathetic doubt right back. They ignore you, cut you off, or write you off entirely. It is not zero talent. It is your weak posture broadcasting defeat long before your competence can step up. Walking in with the presence of a master has nothing to do with ego. It is pure alignment. It is a hard choice to operate as the master you are building instead of the anxious kid you used to be. Real confidence never drops from the sky after a win. It breeds through the daily habit of holding your ground like you actually own it. Once you start acting out that higher identity, your mind falls perfectly in line with the new standard you demand. Your physical shell brutally dictates the exact condition of your internal mind. How you plant your feet, pull your breath, and move, all hardwire direct commands into your nervous system. Let your spine cave in, and your courage immediately collapses right alongside it. Lock your spine, expand the chest, and raise your chin to broadcast absolute control. Just 2 minutes of holding that frame rewires your whole psychological state. The brain reads that physical dominance as pure readiness. You stop shrinking away and start claiming the air around you. Motion reveals exactly who you are. Anxious minds twitch, rush, and flutter through space. Their hands dart around, steps hurry, eyes shifting everywhere. But a practitioner with genuine authority simply moves differently. Every single motion is calm, heavy, and totally purposeful. They refuse to hurry because they are not hiding from the spotlight. They own their ground and operate entirely on their own terms. You and I know that quiet gravity commands respect. It is about seizing initiative while the crowd waits around begging to be noticed. Most people just sit there, waiting for permission to speak. They need applause before acting. But true leaders never wait for an invitation. They build their own momentum by moving first. They speak first, ask sharp questions, and share thoughts without holding back. This habit proves their ownership and quiet confidence. When you and I start taking initiative, the room shifts to match our energy. How we speak is just a mirror of our character. Rushed, shaky speech broadcasts fear, even if the actual idea you are sharing is brilliant. Speaking calmly gives your words actual gravity. When you slow your pace, articulate clearly, and leave space between your thoughts, people have no choice but to stop and listen. Real authority is almost never about volume. It comes down to discipline and intent. Energy spreads fast. The specific mood you drag into a room will bend the entire atmosphere around you. Walk in carrying fear and self-doubt, and that anxiety infects everyone. But step in with quiet focus and firm conviction, and people instantly anchor to your stability. You do not need to fake excitement or put on some kind of mask. True presence stems from inner alignment. When your mind, posture, and actions all point the same way, your energy turns rock solid. Most folks paralyze themselves fearing judgment. They picture an audience constantly tracking their moves, just waiting for a slip-up. The truth is, everyone else is too obsessed with their own flaws to notice yours. Let go of needing universal approval, and you instantly reclaim your personal freedom. As a practitioner of life, your job is not to please the crowd. Your only duty is upholding the standards you set for yourself. Steady repetition is what turns a fleeting presence into concrete character. Faking confidence for one afternoon fixes nothing. But showing up daily with deliberate posture, steady movement, and proactive habits slowly rewires your brain. Soon, it just becomes who you are. Your nervous system learns the new rhythm. What used to feel exhausting simply becomes your new default setting. How you look must match how you talk to yourself. Tell yourself you are an imposter, and your physical body will slump to match that lie. But when your inner dialogue backs up the person you are becoming, the right actions follow effortlessly. Tell yourself daily, you are a creator, a leader, a force that adds immense value to every single room. That kind of mental clarity hardens your outward energy. Showing up like a master does not mean walking around acting like you are better than everyone else. It simply means knowing you have the right to fully occupy your own existence. Build a steady, grounded presence, and people will feel your weight long before they think about it. They pick up on your calm steps, the iron certainty in your voice, and your sharp, decisive actions. Doors start opening not because you begged for attention, but because your whole demeanor proves you are ready to lead. Eventually, this steady rhythm locks into your identity. It shapes exactly how the world sees you, and, more importantly, how you see yourself. Here is something you and I must remember. Building strength is not just adding new habits, it means ruthlessly cutting out whatever drains your confidence. Most people only obsess over addition. They read Stoic texts, stack routines, and chase big goals, completely ignoring the toxic habits and people that are slowly bleeding their energy dry every single day. True growth is never just about what you gain. It is highly dependent on what you destroy. Keep clinging to the weak habits, dead-end rooms, and negative people dragging you down, and your self-improvement will always hit a brick wall. Your confidence heavily depends on what you tolerate. The thoughts you loop, the habits you keep, and the company you hold all program your mind. If you continuously stay in rooms that shrink your spirit, your ego eventually accepts that you are meant to be small. Act against your own stated goals often enough, and your brain simply stops believing your own promises. Self-respect shatters when your daily actions betray your core values. The philosopher's first battleground is the mind. How you speak to yourself in the dark impacts your state far more than any external failure ever could. Too many of us are infinitely more brutal to ourselves than we would ever be to a stranger. They loop old defeats, attack their own skills, and drag up every embarrassing mistake from the past. Eventually, this mental self-harm becomes automatic. You literally wire your brain to anticipate losing just because you fixated on the flaws instead of the lessons. This is where you and I must do the work. When your mind spins those negative assumptions, stop dead in your tracks and interrogate that thought. Ask yourself, is this true to my current effort or just an echo from a much weaker past? Swap the harshness for cold, clear direction. Talk to yourself like a Stoic, building real resilience, not a victim chained to old, dead failures. Your inner voice must drive growth, not tear down your power. Let's examine the next critical area together: the people around you. We are deeply shaped by our social environment. The attitudes, beliefs, and emotional habits of your inner circle slowly rewrite how you perceive reality itself. Certain friends demand your growth, challenge your intellect, and honor your progress. Others bleed your energy dry, anchored constantly to negativity, chronic doubt, and endless complaining. Neither means harm, yet the outcome on your character is drastically different. As you elevate your life, old relationships will inevitably start feeling strained. Many prefer the older, weaker version of you. It lets them stay perfectly comfortable, avoiding their own lack of ambition. When you evolve, your mere existence quietly shatters the comfortable lies they tell themselves. This friction does not mean you have to cut every single person out completely. It means choosing exactly who gets access to your mind. Guarding your mental space is not an act of selfishness. It is a mandatory requirement for forging your future. Daily habits are the next force actively molding your identity. These actions look harmless, but they ruthlessly dictate your self-image over time. Constantly putting off hard work proves to your mind that your discipline is fake. Breaking personal promises destroys your self-respect. Numbing your days with cheap distractions conditions your brain to dodge focus and hard truths. Every single slip erodes your confidence, violating the very standards you and I know you need. To fix this, we must coldly dissect your daily routines. Pinpoint exactly what breeds laziness or steals your drive. Have the Stoic resolve to eliminate them. No half measures, no negotiations. Killing a soft, weak habit instantly clears the ground for a rigid, powerful one to take root. Month by month, these actions forge an iron trust in your own word. Your immediate surroundings also dictate who you become. A chaotic room guarantees a chaotic, scattered mind. Living in a mess fractures your focus and suffocates your drive. Forcing order into your environment is never about perfectionism. It is about commanding mental clarity. When your workspace and home reflect sheer discipline, your internal thoughts naturally mirror that exact structure. The ultimate psychological shift is zero tolerance. Stop accepting anything that insults the high standards you set. Every time you permit a destructive force to stay, you tell the universe that your ultimate goals are completely negotiable. Purging those negative influences flips the script. You prove to yourself that your future identity demands an environment engineered for serious growth. This stripping away will hurt. Old vices fight back hard. Comfortable routines drag you downward. Excuses sound rational when the work gets heavy. But real fortitude is forged when you consistently choose the brutal path over comfort. Every single time you cut out a psychological parasite, you pour concrete into the foundation of your character. Soon enough, the results show. Your mental energy solidifies because petty distractions no longer steal your focus. Your daily actions lock onto your core principles. That fragile self-doubt vanishes because the exact poisons that fed it are banished from your life. By ruthlessly burning away the dead weight, you forge the exact environment required for permanent self-mastery. True confidence is no longer just a wish. It is the guaranteed byproduct of a guarded life. Real transformation starts the second you stop dodging total responsibility. As long as you keep rationalizing your failures with clever excuses, you remain entirely powerless. Excuses are a warm blanket for a fragile ego. They let you pretend that bad luck, toxic coworkers, or poor timing are the actual reasons your success hasn't arrived. But every single excuse rots your character from within. It convinces your brain that you are merely a victim of external forces. The instant you accept that lie, your drive dies entirely, because you surrender the duty of actually designing your own destiny. Extreme ownership is the cure. It means facing the Stoic reality that while you cannot dictate fate, you alone hold absolute responsibility for your reaction to it. The mentally tough never wait for the stars to align before getting to work. They look at the ugly truth of their situation and instantly demand a better question. Instead of crying about why tragedy struck, they ask what actionable step comes next. This mental pivot turns you from a victim into a warrior. The first step you and I must take toward absolute ownership is brutal, honest self-reflection. You must look at the mess of your current reality without hiding behind soft, comforting lies. Ask yourself where you dragged your feet, where you blamed others for your own failures, and exactly where cowardice dictated your major life choices. Staring into that mirror hurts deeply, but I promise you, it sets you entirely free. The exact second you claim total fault for your life, you earn the absolute power to rewrite it. Through ownership, every single step gains purpose. The tiniest choice starts carving out your new identity. simply getting out of bed when the alarm rings. You and I know the real practice begins in private. Finishing a task you promised yourself you'd do, holding the line when no one is watching, that proves your word means something. Your belief in yourself hardens when your actions align with your vows. That trust is the purest form of Stoic confidence we can forge. Real progress doesn't demand some loud overnight reinvention. It demands steady, unglamorous work over time. Even a tiny step forward daily compounds into massive growth if you just hold steady. In our practice, we call this the 1% rule. Getting slightly better each day generates a momentum that eventually becomes unstoppable. Early on, the shifts feel microscopic, but the compound interest of those years becomes undeniable. Still, your agency is only truly tested when the resistance hits. Days will come when you feel completely drained, ready to abandon the path. Those exact seconds separate mere philosophy from true character. Anyone can put in the reps when motivation runs hot. Anyone can stay disciplined when the work feels thrilling. But the practitioners who actually reshape their reality are those who step forward, even when their feelings scream at them to quit. When the urge to surrender rises, your own mind will feed you incredibly rational-sounding excuses. It whispers that you earned a break, that the toll is too heavy, or that tomorrow will somehow be a better day. These impressions are dangerously persuasive because they offer instant comfort. But the second you yield, you carve a deep habit of running away from friction. Let's look at how we break this. We counter that weakness by practicing the rule of just one more. When your brain begs you to fold, firmly command yourself to take a single extra step. Just one more minute of deep work. One more physical repetition, one more page read, one more strike at the obstacle standing in your way. These tiny choices of endurance might look trivial, but they rewire your psychology completely. They instruct your mind that pain does not mean stop. It is merely the required tax for growth. Every time you push through the friction, you forge a harder mindset. Your mind finally accepts that you can outlast temporary exhaustion. Give it time, and that discipline becomes your default state. Instead of dodging the hard path, you walk straight into it. You realize the fire is exactly what tempers the steel of your character. True mastery requires absolute emotional control. When a barrier drops, getting angry or defeated is the easy way out. But emotional reactions breed careless choices that push your targets completely out of reach. Choosing your response deliberately keeps you anchored to the Stoic ideal you are building. Instead of letting random external events control your mind, you lock your gaze on the path you laid down. Those who actually advance their lives share one defining trait. They stay faithful to their future selves, even when today feels like absolute hell. They know physical comfort fades, but the resilient foundation they pour now dictates how the rest of the story unfolds. By holding the line with grit and personal accountability, they prove that their aims aren't just empty philosophy. They are ironclad vows. Once you anchor into this truth, every hardship transforms into the perfect sparring partner for your soul. Brutal conditions stop looking like roadblocks and start looking like the gym. Every time you kill an excuse and push past the exhaustion, you violently shatter the false limits you used to believe in. Give it time, and your self-image radically evolves. You stop playing the helpless victim, waiting for perfect conditions to start. You become the engine that manufactures momentum by striking first. Extreme ownership drops its weight and actually becomes your ultimate liberation. Because claiming complete control over your actions grants you the authority to dictate the future. Now, The hardest phase of this practice isn't day one, when the fire burns bright. And it isn't the end, when the victory is obvious. The ultimate test of your Stoic character is the middle. That dead zone where you put in the hours daily, but the harvest remains completely unseen. This is where amateurs abandon their beliefs. They start to doubt the process entirely. They scan the room, watching others sprint ahead, secure empty praise, or hit milestones seemingly overnight. Uncertainty creeps in, and the urge to break your vows grows incredibly heavy. But real inner alchemy always takes root in the dark, long before the crowd ever sees the fruit. Just like a tree secures its foundation in the dirt first, your core identity is hardening silently before the external reality catches up. Every calculated choice, every ruthless hour of deep focus, every second you suffer but don't fold, it all chisels away the weak stone. The upgrade might not reflect in the mirror yet, but it is forging your habits, sharpening your logic, and cementing your character. So many break during this silent phase because our primitive brains demand immediate validation. We desperately want proof that the struggle means something. We crave fast payouts to soothe our anxiety about the path. When that metric doesn't spike instantly, our rational minds panic and seek an escape hatch. Novices rewrite their plans, drop their principles entirely, or jump to shiny new tactics. What must you and I remember? True progress demands time to compound. Every time you quit and restart, you kill your momentum. As practitioners, trusting the process means staying loyal to the path. Hold the line until results catch up with your effort. Understand this. The daily discipline you practice today might not hand you a trophy tomorrow, but it forges the character and identity that ultimately commands those very rewards. You and I must stop measuring progress by outside validation. Let's weigh the raw quality of our choices instead. Ask yourself a hard question. Did you actually show up when you promised? Did you hold your focus when cheap distractions popped up? Did you keep executing when your motivation completely vanished? These quiet victories carry far more weight than flashy, short-lived success. Another Stoic rule for surviving the invisible season is guarding your personal vision. A vision isn't just a basic goal. It is the architectural blueprint of the life you are constructing and the exact person you are becoming. Without a solid vision, your mind simply drifts. You become a slave to whatever demands your energy right now. The world constantly sells you distractions, cleverly disguised as opportunities. Shiny ideas, sudden demands, and endless data wage war for your focus. Unanchored, those distractions will slowly drag you off the path. Locking in your philosophy requires absolute clarity on 3 core things. First, know why your aim actually matters. Your reason has to cut deeper than cheap applause or quick cash. It must tie directly to the character you demand of yourself. Second, figure out exactly who you need to become to pull it off. Define the strict discipline, routines, and mental framework that will build your future. Third, name the brutal actions you must repeat every single day. Nail these down, and your course stays steady when the storms hit. Yet even with iron discipline and a clear mind, you will still fail. No path to true growth is paved smoothly. Expect mistakes, brutal setbacks, and moments where your momentum just hits a brick wall. Amateurs look at these hard moments as proof they lack talent, or that their ambition was just a foolish dream. Here is a truth you and I must face. Failure is not the enemy of progress. It is progress. The only difference between a master and a quitter is how they handle the dirt. Most people trip once, let their ego bruise, and walk away entirely. A practitioner falls, studies the failure with cold logic, and stands back up infinitely sharper than before. Every time you get up, your mental armor thickens. You train your brain to see mistakes as passing weather, not a fatal sentence on your character. When tragedy strikes, apply a Stoic reset. Step 1. Look at the raw facts of the situation without emotion. Break down what broke, extract the core lesson, and refuse to exaggerate the damage. Next, step back. Let your mind rest and recover until the fog clears and logic returns. Drop the useless guilt and toxic shame. Those weak emotions build nothing. Once your head is straight, get back to work immediately. Even taking a microscopic step restores your momentum. Mental toughness is forged through brutal, endless repetition. Every single time you face chaos and push through, your brain logs the proof that you can survive it. Soon enough, this grit wires itself directly into your identity. You stop flinching at obstacles because you know they cannot destroy you. They are just resistance training for your soul, hardening your absolute character. Combine blind trust in your daily practice with fierce loyalty to your vision, plus the guts to stand back up. That is where power is born. Your growth stops being fragile. It becomes inevitable. You stop begging for cheap motivation or quick wins to keep going. Instead, your hardened philosophy drags you straight through the doubt, pain, and delay. Eventually, the results you sought arrive. The quiet, disciplined habits you practiced in the dark finally yield undeniable, visible outcomes. The sheer grit you pulled from the wreckage becomes your ultimate weapon. The stoic person you evolve into matters far more than any earthly result. Because the highest achievement is never just crossing a finish line. For you and me, true victory is becoming someone who refuses to stop growing, no matter how brutal the path gets.